Do you think the use of performance enhancing drugs in sports is cheating? Of course you do. So then why is it not cheating to have transgender women compete against biological females? Today I want to take a look at whether transgender women should be allowed to participate in female sporting events. These athletes have a physical and physiological advantage over their female competitors. Women have been fighting tirelessly for their place in sports, and now that's at risk to transgender athletes. Let's take a look at some of the history. If we take the Olympics, for example, the first Olympic Games, which are now more commonly known as the Summer Olympics, were held on April 6, 1896 in Athens, Greece. This major international multi-sport event was at the time of inauguration only open to male athletes. It wasn't in fact until 4 years later, in the summer of 1900, that female athletes were allowed to compete. At which point, out of 997 athletes, only 22 of them were women. That's about 2%. Furthermore, these Olympic Games hosted 19 total sports, and only 5 of them were available to those 22 women. We fast forward to 120 years later to the Olympic Games of 2020, hosted in Tokyo, Japan. We saw an incredible 5,400 female athletes competing in 174 events. These numbers did not occur overnight, and neither did their strength and confidence. It took years of training for these women athletes to get to that level. Now that we have a small but meaningful understanding of the evolution of female athletes in sports, let's stay right where we're at, 2023. Today's generation of female athletes are no longer competing simply amongst themselves for these top positions, but also against transgender women. In today's world, we are not learning about the birds and the bees, but also the birds and the birds, the bees and the bees that want to be birds and the birds that want to be bees. I mean, that's a lot going on, yes? Society has gotten very complicated with a plethora of pronouns to be used. In all seriousness, though, even if transgender women undergo intensive hormone replacement therapy to suppress their testosterone levels, if this transition occurs at any point after puberty, their physical advantages their bodies receive from years of testosterone release make them incomparable to cisgender females. As Allison Heather writes in her article, Trans Women Athletes, male physiology underpins their better athletic performance, including increased muscle mass, strength, stronger bones, different skeletal structure, better adapted cardiorespiratory systems, and early developmental effects on brain network that wires males to be inherently more competitive and aggressive. Testosterone secreted before birth, postnatally, and then after puberty is the major factor that drives these physiological sex differences. And as adults, testosterone levels are 10 to 15 times higher in males than they are in females. This is according to Public Health 2022. All this to say, though, trans women may look female, biologically and genetically they are not. Female athletes pour hours and hours into perfecting themselves and their skills so they can be the greatest in their respective sports. Hours and years of training, lifting, running, dieting, to lift another plate, to shave milliseconds off their personal best, to endure just an extra 200 meters. And then here come transgender athletes with their genetically male performance abilities trying to claim their hard-earned titles. That is simply unacceptable. The issue in today's society is not with transgender individuals or even transgender athletes, but with transgender women athletes in particular. How so, you may ask? Let's take a look at Leah Thomas, for example. When competing as a man, she ranked 65th in the 500 freestyle, to winning the NCAA Division I National Championship as a female. Now that's a big jump from 65th to national champion. So the issue there that I'm concerned with is whether men who are now choosing to be women should be allowed to overshadow hardworking cisgender female athletes. As Donald Lupano writes, the fact that trans girls and women were born with biological male bodies means that even after taking hormones or undergoing surgery or both, they don't fit neatly into female or male categories, biologically speaking. In order to maintain the integrity of female sports and female athleticism, I strongly believe that women or trans women should not be allowed to participate in competitive female sporting events. This is not to say, however, that trans individuals should be banned from athletic or athletic competitions. Perhaps instead of joining the female events, they can instead fight to have their own events. After all, female events were originally created in order to have fair competition, and allowing transgender individuals to invade them would demolish that idea altogether. What's fair is fair, tweeted trans activist Caitlyn Jenner, praising the recent decision by swimming's world governing body FINA to ban trans athletes from women's competitions. Any athlete who has gone through puberty, if you go through male puberty, you should not be able to take medals away from females. Period, wrote Jenner, who won a gold medal in the 1976 Olympics. Trans persons should be allowed to participate in team and competitive sports. However, if they are keen on creating a new identity outside of the social norms, then they should advocate for their identity to be acknowledged across the board, and including sports. So rather than fighting and advocating to take over women's sports, they should have their own. That being said, we must protect women's sports for our mothers, sisters, and daughters. Don't let them be cheated.